All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully your favorite Chelsea podcast out there and a part of the Men in Blazers media network. And look, just because the men are on international break doesn't mean we can't get excited for some things going on at Chelsea. Not ownership civil wars, but the return of the Chelsea women's season. That's right, preseason done and dusted. The FAWSL about to kick off once again for, I don't know, maybe the sixth time in a row league champions. Like, let's just start the positivity going in advance here, Nick, because we were hoping that under Sonia Bompastor, the end of the Emma Hayes era, the start of Sonia's era, that Chelsea and the women's team are hopefully going to have another phenomenal season and continue to be the best team, if you're a Chelsea fan, that maybe you're not watching and you should be.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, if you're a new manager, you couldn't have walked into a better situation than this. I mean, it is riches to riches all over the place, and we'll talk about some new additions. We'll talk about some preseason predictions, and of course, get into some of our fun awards. But yeah, we are welcomed by one Rob, RPJ Journalism. Rob, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
Very good. Yeah, we are excited to talk to you because you were on hand yesterday. We're recording this on Sunday, the 8th of September. You were on hand for the 9-0 friendly win against Feyenoord. And it was pretty nice, huh? Pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean, as far as home games or first home games go for a new manager, besides the two injuries, you pretty much perfect sort of copybook other than those two blocks, a perfect copybook, really.
Yeah, we want to get into all that. So, I mean, I think in this episode we'll take a quick look at what went on during preseason, because Chelsea won not one, not two, but three. That's right, three of their preseason matches done and dusted. Great way to start the momentum of this upcoming season. We'll also take a look at what's been happening with players. A lot of movement, incoming, departures, what's happening. Kind of helps us set the stage for maybe who the best or strongest or most impactful 11 are. And we've got some opinions about why there might be some differences there. Why are we using different adjectives to describe those starting 11s? And then we'll get into those fun awards that Nick talked about. Before we do that, the quick admin we always get out of the way on the top. Thank you if you have left a wonderful 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Always appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, takes 15 to 20 seconds. It's a great way to help support the podcast. You can also get on YouTube if you're watching it here. Subscribe, like, comment, hit the bell icon to get notified. All the videos are coming up here. We've got exclusive YouTube videos too that we do as well. So, it's just a great way to get involved. You also can sign up for our free weekly newsletter, the London is Blue Dispatch, and you can get into our Discord community in a free or paid version. But look, we did talk about the 9-0 win. Yes, 9-0 win yesterday. We also had the 1-0 win against the Arsenal women, and then we had the 3-1 victory in New Jersey against Gotham FC to round out the 3 dubs under Sonia Bompastor to start her reign. But as we think about it, maybe just Rob in general, it's a transition period. It's a time of handover. Preseason is usually a lot about getting fitness, getting right, getting ready. Just what were your overall thoughts on how the preseason in totality has been executed and what we've learned?
I think, to be honest, you wanted a preseason where, firstly, you want to win in preseason, but also you want to start seeing new ideas and sort of new ways come about, and you want to start to see a manager make a real stamp on things. And I think that's what Chelsea got. I think you started to see clearly some of the elements of Sonia Bompastor's football that she really wants to deploy. You saw the style of player that she likes to sort of use and that she can most cultivate, and also the kind of results that she wants to get. I think it's important to note, and I've said this before, Bompastor isn't just a manager who is used to winning with Olympique Lyonnais. She also had an incredibly good player career at Olympique Lyonnais. People who aren't necessarily familiar with her will maybe not realise that Chelsea women now are perhaps coached by 2 of the greatest French players of the last decade, or the last sort of 20 years at least, if not of all time. And they are people who have incredibly high pedigree.
What I loved about the Arsenal game in particular, Rob, is like, look, these are, it was hot in DC. It's obviously a taxing environment to play in. We're a little bit more used to the heat over here than you guys are over there. But what I loved about the post game little huddle that they did is her first, Bompastor's first words were, "It's important to win." Like it's an important marker, even in preseason, right? Even in a game that does not count for anything, it's important for us to win. It wasn't a great performance in that game, but it was a scrappy performance, and we got it across the line. And I love that. I think you take that sort of competitiveness and that sort of drive, and you can go a long way if that's just like the baseline that you enter the season on. And, again, it's preseason. It doesn't really matter. The 9-0 score line against Feyenoord, it's not going to matter next week when we open the season. But this is it's a good look, and I think a good vibe for where she's going to kind of hold the players accountable to.
And I think it's important also to sort of note that, with that game, which again at times it became more like, an extended water break that was occasionally interrupted by bouts of football, I think it was sort of important to sort of see that from minute one to sort of even to the very, very end, even after all the substitutes were made, the intent was there to make sure we win this, we don't concede. And I think, bar a couple of chances, most of which were actually from Chelsea's, own sort of poor decision making, they didn't really let Arsenal have a sniff of a clear cut chance. And a lot of them, there were a few chances that were things from, the edge of the box and shots from range, but they're chances you'd expect the goalkeeper to save. And I think that's, an important thing to really build into it, because at times, especially early in the season last year, I think Chelsea conceded too many goals that you looked at and you thought they were preventable goals. I don't mind it if, a team against you produces a wonderful array of, 30 passes and just carves you to pieces. I don't mind if an individual player picks the ball up from 40 yards and, goes past two and rifles it into the top corner. Sometimes you just got to say, fair enough. What I do mind is when you've got goals where you give the ball away, and this will sound awfully familiar to fans of the men's team, give the ball away anywhere in your own third, and then, you lunge in, you dive in, you're desperate, you don't make the connections, you don't make the tackles, and you concede a cheap chance. Because ultimately, in order to score a goal, you should be made to work for it. I think that's the worst feeling in football, is when you concede a goal and the opposition hasn't had to work for it.
So when we kind of maybe take a little bit of a next level down look at not just what Sonia Bompastor and the overall Chelsea women team did across those games, but the players, and we had a chance to see the individual performances they put together. I know we got a chance to see some very exciting moments from Aggie Beaver-Jones when we were watching the game against Gotham, and she's continued to have a really, really bright preseason. Any players that you want to highlight specifically, Nick? Again, we could just be hyping it just could be the Aggie train the whole episode. That would be perfectly fine with me too. But other players maybe that you want to talk about as having a preseason that gets you really excited for what they're going to do this year.
Yeah, I mean, Vika Kaptein, I think, stood out in preseason. Obviously, was back on loan last year. Didn't get to see her as part of Chelsea's team, but it looked in the Gotham game in particular, Rob, and I would throw this over to you as well, because I think you're an enthusiast alongside me for this one. It looked like we had cloned Aaron Cuthbert, and there were two of them out there doing very similar things. Maybe Kaptein has a little bit more upside on the just total athleticism meter, which is frightening when you think about it, because she's so young. But it looked so controlled and I think so mature for someone who is not that in age. I was shocked just to see how easily she settled into that midfield and just started playing her game. And of course, the passes that you're getting out of that midfield are pretty spectacular as well. So I was remarkably impressed by what I saw with Kaptein.
I'd have to echo that. I mean, I'm going to butcher her name here, so apologies. My very good friend Amber van Lieshout, who's a Dutch football journalist, she last summer, I told her at the beginning of last summer, I think it was last June, I heard that Chelsea were tracking Kaptein, and about, she put the story out, and about 2 weeks later they announced the signing. And I said, yeah, I'd heard this one for a while. They'd been looking at her extensively, because they also looked at another, US star, Lily Johannes, who obviously is at Ajax, and they'd also looked at Kaptein. And at the time, Chelsea decided, right, we really need to go for one. Let's go for Kaptein, but agree. And they spent quite a long time negotiating over it, because originally Chelsea were expected to pay a high fee, but in the end they managed to negotiate the fee down by sending her back on loan for the year. And she's done phenomenally well on loan again. Twente have had a really good season, and Captain, by all accounts, from what I understand, was probably their best player last year. Now, to be the best player of the team at 18 is quite something, and I think the biggest compliment I can pay to her, as well as the Cuthbert element of it, her ability and calmness in the rotations and her ability and calmness on the ball, it reminds me of Kim Little. Now, people who know me, know I don't really like getting into the tribalism element of it. I think Kim Little's just a phenomenal footballer, and the world will be a lot poorer when she does finally hang up her boots. I think, again, she'd have got a lot more. If she hadn't been Scottish, I think if she had been English, people would talk about her at the level that she deserves to be talking about, which is at the very, very pinnacle of the game. And I think that's a great shame that people can't look past that. But I think Captain reminded me of that, and I think that level of composure, that level of confidence, to come into a Chelsea side that have so many star names and so many big names in there, and to not look a beat out of place is quite something at that age.
And any other players, Rob, as you think about, the three matches that we've seen, we've talked about a few players, anyone else who's caught your eye, or maybe you would want to put on the radar for people who, again, are more of a casual watcher of the Chelsea women's team, or as we'll get to in a moment when we talk about player movements, might not know the entire cast of characters anymore after a little bit of an overhaul?
I think I certainly think she started to appear at the end of last season. I think Micah Hamano had a really impressive preseason. I think with the injury to Katerina Macario and Macario's fitness, there's been a bit of a gap in that number 10 role, where when Lauren James isn't playing, there's been a debate about who goes into there and who sits in there. And I think you can put Macario in that. I think you could put Myra Ramirez in that. But I think Hamano really stamped out her authority and said, I am a proper option in this position. She scored a couple of times, but she got a couple of assists. But what really impressed me was her willingness and drive just to take players on, and the fact she was just showed that confidence. And at times it can be misplaced towards arrogance, and she's a young player. There were some decisions that she got wrong, and that's understandable, but I particularly liked, I think it was during the Gotham game, where just picked the ball up on the left wing and was down in the corner flag, and brilliant turn to get out of there and manoeuvred an opportunity. And it's that sort of play I think Chelsea are going to need against teams, especially when they decide to sit in and play low blocks against them. It's that sort of ingenuity and creativity that perhaps they've been, missing at times in the last few years. And I think, having that player who's willing to put the ball down and dribble past someone, it's something Fran Kirby used to do a lot in her younger years. And it's something perhaps, she hadn't necessarily, she became more of a goal scorer. It's sort of dropped out of her game a little bit. James does do it, but she does it in a slightly different way. I think she's a lot more direct in terms of purely just going for the goal, whereas Hamano was able to do it both as a direct player, but also as an indirect player in terms of on the wing and creating chances. And I think the fact she also showed, she stepped up yesterday. I think took one of the her first touch was the set piece that Aggie Beaver-Jones nodded in for her goal. I think ability to have an extra set piece taker in the squad is something that Chelsea have lacked.
All right. Well, we want to get into a little bit more about who's come in, who's on their way or has left already, and then kind of start talking about what does that mean for a starting 11, what we might be expecting in the start of the from the actual season, or in some of those big matches that Chelsea are going to play this year. But we're going to do that after this break, so stay tuned. Be right back. All right, Nick. So I'm not trying to put you on duty or give you a ton of work here, but there's a lot of player movement that has occurred. I mean, if you just go to Chelsea's website, even an article from a week or two ago is outdated because the amount of movement that the Chelsea women's team and the sporting structure has gone through this season to get us ready to compete, to refresh in certain positions, to make sure that we've got the right depth of squad, has put us in a position where the incoming list is long, the departure list is very long, and so balance had to be maintained. Why don't you run me through a couple of the incomings that we've had? You don't need to give me, everything about their life story, but maybe to set the stage for people who want to know a little bit more about this side.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the incomings, Rob, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. A lot of this is kind of a look to the future and depth more than it is like bringing in superstars, right? Like this is a way to kind of bolster the squad without, necessarily unsettling it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Although I will also say, that I'm very much a believer that if you're good enough, you're old enough. And I think certainly with at least one of the names on the list, it's someone who Chelsea went ahead and signed because they feel by the end of the season they could potentially be, the starting name in that position.
It's pretty impressive. So, just to go down the list, Meili Sempam, it just comes in a couple days ago as a future kind of look at what the center back role could be at Chelsea. Julia Bartel is a Barcelona academy player who is a midfielder who could potentially slot into a number 10 in the future. Sandy Baltimore, obviously a well-known 24-year-old, comes over from PSG, can kind of play either wing, which is, I think, really important when you look at where the injuries kind of happened last year to have some flexibility there. Orion Jean-Francois comes over from PSG as well. And I think that this one is a very, very interesting option, just given, some of the injuries we have in midfield. Lucy Bronze, the most well-established name of the group, obviously, can play fullback, can play center back in a pinch, could play midfield as well. And then Riabadera comes over as well, talented French forward, is definitely one for the future. So any of these, Rob, that you're looking at where you're like, that was the smartest move of the summer, or one that, I think, as you kind of alluded to, could be a starter?
I think Mason Pome is the interesting one. Pome is really, really highly regarded in France and is someone who a lot of people were debating, why did Leon have a habit of hoovering up the younger players and sending them back on loan for a year? And people were saying, why haven't Leon done this? Because they need a longer term. Wendy Renard, as good as she's been, is not getting any younger. And Pome is seen as a similar caliber of player to that of Wendy Renard. I think that she is one who Chelsea are looking at in the longer term to be, a star that could potentially be there for a long, long time. She's a very much a modern defender, very athletic, very very, very strong in the air, very, very good in the tackle. And I think she's someone who, with the right partner, you can have a really, really good combination there. The other one I also want to just, draw a bit of attention to, I think, and again, we mentioned it, Orion Jean-Francois, I think this is potentially a really, really smart signing from Chelsea. She has been injured a lot in the last couple of years, so I would urge people to give her time. But she's someone who, in that defensive midfield role, she has pretty much everything you'd want in there. And in many ways, she's kind of like a younger version of Grace Gioro, in that she's, can be very athletic, be very box to box, is very good in the tackle, doesn't have a bad shot on her either. And I think it's going to take a bit of time for her to get fit. I think she herself has sort of said this, we're not going to rush it. But I think that Ariel Jean-Francois is someone who, when you're looking at potentially for the end of the season, you'll talk about maybe Cuthbert, Jean-Francois, Vika Kaptein, Serka Nusken, and Sophie Ingle in that midfield unit, ignoring anyone else who maybe also comes in. And Bartel, I think, can also play deeper. Even though they're quite young, there's a lot of quality in there.
And then, so as we look at who has left, so, just to keep people honest on the fact that the players and club legends like Frank Kirby are no longer with the side, there is a long list of individuals who have made their way out of Chelsea. Do you just want to kind of quickly, Nick, run us through those who are no longer a part of the Chelsea women's infrastructure?
And play the I will remember you. You got to do that. Frank Kirby, Maren Mielda, Melanie Loopholes, Rihanna Blades, Alsu Abdulina, Nikki Everard, Jess Carter. Unfortunate that one. Katarina Svitkova, Yelena Chenkovic, and Emily Orman all leave this summer. And I'm looking at this, Rob, as a few of these players kind of think reached the natural end of their Chelsea careers. A player in there I'm still upset has left, and a few were just role players who I think were probably looking for more minutes, more game time, and given the big squad size that we're rocking with here, probably made sense for them to leave. Is that kind of your read on the situation?
Yeah, to be honest, all of the departures this summer, and even the one I think you're probably alluding to, I can kind of understand. I think that there's a lot of players there that are good players and are going to go and have decent careers elsewhere, but won't necessarily the caliber of Chelsea. And there are also some players there, for example, Melanie Leopold, for example. I think no one could begrudge her choosing to go for another big move. She's just turned, 30. She's had her sort of, child. And if she wants to have, that one big move, now is probably the last chance to go and do it. So she's won pretty much everything domestically here, had a shots at the Champions League. And it's nice to see a player going and, accepting that I'll go elsewhere, I'll go and have a chance to go and try another division. And I also want to, pay tribute, I think, also to a bit of an odd one, but also to Emily Orman, who for a long time has done a lot of things that Chelsea have asked for her without necessarily ever really getting a shot, and has, a lot of the time put her own career on hold, and it is the right time, I think, now for her to go out, because there's a very, very good goalkeeper in there. There's no surprise she's been signed by London City Lionesses. It wouldn't surprise me if she gets promotion on her books, and I do, genuinely, I do wish her and wish all the players that leave very well, because I don't think there's anyone you're looking at that list and you're saying, well, actually, Chelsea didn't get the most out of them, or they could have done more for the team. I think, you've got everyone here this summer where you're saying, thank you, good luck for the future, and, hope to see you again.
So now that we know or have set the stage for viewers and listeners about who's come in, who's departed, we've also talked about who's really had a strong preseason, players that we're excited to see once the season kicks off proper. We had this idea we talked about at the top of the best or strongest starting 11 or most impactful starting 11. And this was our pre-show conversation that is making it onto the show, because I think it's going to be really valuable to set the stage for who Bompastor may or may not be relying upon this season. But I think to maybe frame it, Rob, we started this idea of best 11, and then we did fracture it to this idea of the most impactful and strongest. So let's maybe set the stage with why there's a differentiation there. And then I'll have Nick share his to give you a bit of a break before we force you to run through a full 11 again.
So I think probably the big differentiator I sort of make is that there's a lot of games this year in all the competitions. And in certain big matches, Chelsea are going to need to play certain ways because of the way the team are, and the fact, you're not going to dominate the ball in quite so much in, say, a big Champions League, say, quarterfinal or semi-final tie, as you will when you play at home to Crystal Palace, for instance. And at the same time, some teams are going to come and play, high defensive line, high risk. Other teams are going to sit in with, a low block that would make Sam Allardyce weak because it's so beautiful. This is the sort of thing that this is the sort of thing that Chelsea have to get used to. And I think that even more that becomes a point this year, because they've changed manager. There's no longer, the cult of Emma Hayes. People are going to look at Chelsea and think this year they're there to be got at. And I think it's Chelsea's challenge to make sure, to show everyone the person in the dugout may have changed. I think it's important, actually, while we talk about departures, to also pay tribute to the fact that Emma's left, and obviously has left an absolute dynasty for Sonia Bompastor to build on. But even though the person has changed, the mentality doesn't change. You still want to win everything.
Hi, Nick. So which one are you giving us? Are you giving us a strongest 11? Or are you giving us a most impactful 11? What do you want to share?
I think I'm going the best 11 that I could put forward right now, regardless of situation or game type. And then maybe Rob can do the strongest 11 for those big matches. So I'm going Hampton. I'm going, actually, surprisingly, as I was thinking through the right back, I think Ashley Lawrence. If we get Ashley Lawrence against Barcelona, Ashley Lawrence, that is excellent. Millie Bright, Natalie Bjorn, Neve Charles as the back line. I think that's still a pretty good back line. Erin Cuthbert, Shuka Nuskin in midfield. Guro Wrighton forever on the left wing for me. Kat Mack in kind of that number 10 role, and then LJ off the right. And then I'm putting Myra Ramirez in there just at this stage of the season, not knowing how Sam's full recovery is going to go. Just to make that, but you could easily swap Sam in there for best 11. So I don't know, Rob. I think there is there are so many options, I should say, to kind of parse through in every sort of area. But I think that as we talked about before we started recording, that attacking three behind the striker, there's such a vast array of player types and strengths in there that I don't know if you could really go wrong, frankly.
I think that's interesting. And I think what was really interesting yesterday was Sonia Bompastor after the game talking about her, style of play, and make it clear she wanted to have a lot of different styles. And also, most excitingly for me, she mentioned a two-striker formation. Now, I really enjoy a two-striker formation.
Hold on. I thought that was against the rules. I didn't think we were allowed to
I believe the sacred texts actually do define that you are allowed to put two players up front. But I'd really like at some point to see, I think especially in one of the games where maybe you're playing against a lower block and you can maybe get away with it, if you put Erin Cuthbert in that midfield, alongside maybe, let's say, Nuskin inside there so she can sit in box crash from deeper. You maybe have James and Wrighton on the wing, and then you put Ramirez and Kerr in there on the basis that at least 3 players are going to need to mark Raul Ramirez to get anywhere near her, and any time that she doesn't actually win the header and the ball happens to knock down, you've got Kerr in there just to smash it into the net. But yeah, no, I think it's really interesting because I was discussing this the other day with someone else about most impactful 11s, and I think it's actually quite hard to. On paper, I have an idea of one, but I think there's going to be times in the season that certain players are going to be more impactful than others. For instance, I think early on Baltimore might start off really, really strong because teams aren't really going to know what she's about, and they aren't really going to. I don't think a lot of teams are going to realise quite how quick Sandy Baltimore is, and they're going to make the mistake of leaving a player back and be like, oh, she's fine to be covered by one. She's going to outrun most of the defenders in the league. I think, bar maybe Emily Fox, Jade Riviere, that sort of level of pace. We're sort of talking about, Greenwood because she's a really smart defender if she is playing fullback. I think Baltimore's probably going to outrun most of the defenders in the league. But I think, going for a whole 11, the goalkeeper, I personally think is Hannah Hampton, but I know like a lot of people say Musovic has worked really hard behind the scenes in the summer, and I think that's a really good thing to hear because you want, genuine competition between the two of them. And I think, while I do personally think Hampton is a better goalkeeper, I don't think Musovic is, a bad backup at all to have. I think it's a really nice position to be in where you're looking at multiple goalkeepers. And also, you've got young Katie Cox at the club who's incredibly highly regarded, and you're looking at them and thinking, well, there's no problem there. Right back, this is the really interesting one. I think in bigger games, Chelsea will go for Perisset. But I think in terms of being more impactful going forward, I think you're looking at Bronze or Lawrence. I think it depends which Ashley Lawrence you get. But as I've said later on, for one of the other categories we'll discuss, I think Lawrence is going to have a big season. Centre backs, I think Brighton Bjorn can form a really good partnership. Left back Charles, I don't think anyone's really arguing with those, with that pick. Then in the midfield, I think Cuthbert and Nuskin, you have to go with them. Cuthbert's just, shoe on the team sheet. And Nuskin, well, despite the fact we've signed her as, a defensive midfielder, she appears to so far be playing every position other than that. But, frighteningly, yes, they are new Ballon d'Or nominee. Congratulations to her on that. Has now also learned how to, curl shots in from outside the box, which is kind of terrifying. Like, you had a sort of a centre forward that can also play centre back, that can play right back, that can also play defensive midfield and play box to box midfield, and has now suddenly decided to, channel the inner Kevin De Bruyne. In terms of behind the striker, this is where it's really tough because you're looking at every name there and you're thinking everyone has good. Lauren James has to be in there because of the season that she had last year. Now comes the really tricky bits because I personally think it's hard to, if you get end of season girl right and then Wrighton slots in easily on the left hand side. But in the interest of change, in the interest of just seeing how she could do, I'd maybe put Myra in, have her rampaging off the wing, just because Myra off the wing, they did this style of play against Manchester United at the end of the season, and I think Millie Turner's probably still having nightmares about it, of the fact that she sat in that space and just tore Blundell and Turner to bits for about 60 minutes. So I think Myra off the left, and then I'd probably put Macario in behind in that number 10 role because I think we haven't seen the best of Katerina Macario, and I still wait for that. And then I think you put Kerr up front because when Sam Kerr is fully fit and impactful, I mean she is. Again, she reaches Didier Drogba levels of clutch when you're required. That's, what you can say. But if Kerr isn't fully fit, then, and while she's not fully fit, I think you put Ramirez up front, you put Wright on the left.
So those are some interesting and strong 11s.
And we didn't even mention Aggie in there, who I think is poised to have a breakout year.
This is the other thing with most impactful, is like, my other argument for that left-hand side is if you're talking impactful, do you put Beaver Jones on the left? Because I still think she's better as a striker, but I think she's a damn good left winger. But I think you've seen this in pre-season, I think very much she's viewed as a striker by Sonia Bompastor. And why wouldn't she be after the pre-season that she's had?
Well, right. I mean, if we deploy a press, there are a few people that I'd want in those attacking roles more than Aggie because she has the drive, the energy to consistently get up there, where I think you've seen maybe some of our other options not always go full bore into a pressing situation. So it's going to be fascinating because she is an excellent footballer who had an excellent year last year out of nowhere. And that wasn't even a mention. Dan, the team is deep. Let me just put it that way.
The team is very deep, which is a good thing to consider. I mean, if you look at the fact that there are a few matches to the start of the season, and then I think when would we anticipate this 11 getting sorted? Because I think we've seen it with the men as well, with Maresca, on trying to figure out like who the right grouping of players is. Again, this is a season with both senior team having a new manager, also many players incoming and outgoing, to try to sort down and lock into who are those guaranteed starters. Rob, if you're thinking, how many matches into the season will it take for us to get some semblance of who that natural 11 is going to be for Bompastor?
I think, to be honest, she will know quite quickly. I get the feeling she's someone who, is quite decisive in that regard. You're looking at things like, by that Manchester United game, that Manchester United Arsenal double header, and then Tottenham after that, I think she will want to know by then what her first choice 11 at this moment looks like. Until the squad is fully fit, then once you get to a point, if we're saying the squad is fully fit, maybe I'm sort of, let's say, mid-November time, there's that 10th of November Liverpool fixture. I think if the squad was fully fit, she'd want to maybe know exactly what it looks like by then. But I think by that Manchester United game, she'll want to have that, because that United Tottenham Arsenal Tottenham trio of games is a really big period, because that's a good chance to really stamp authority down and say we're here to win.
So that kind of sets the stage for what a starting 11 might look like when we might get to one. There's going to be a whole host of different deployments based upon the competition we're in, the opposition we're up against. It's a very top heavy league in the FAWSL, and the competition is not always easy in the Women's Champions League, as Chelsea has proven in its inability to not get it across the finish line there. Not without some very, very strong attempts and very deep runs, though. But look, we want to get into the fun part of this episode, or maybe more fun than what we've already been talking about, and start to make some predictions that may or may not come back to bite us in the very near future. But before we do that, we're going to get our last ad break out of the way. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, so prediction part of the episode, an opportunity for us to put on record some thoughts and hopefully get them absolutely 100% right, because if we do, it means that Chelsea probably have had a really good season, all things considered. But we're going to start right at the tippity top of it all with just league performance and points total. If we don't recall, last season, the Chelsea women won the FAWSL. Not on points, though, but on goal difference, plus 53 to plus 46 against Manchester City. Look, if you want to run it down to the thinnest of margins in the end of the season to come away with a trophy victory, Nick, you can't get much closer than that.
It was a remarkable close to the year, remarkable comeback in the title race. I mean, I think after City beat us in February, I think there was this slow march to the end of the year. Is this, we're going to go trophyless in Emma's last season. And then the team really just turned it on in a miraculous way. The last three matches, helped out by a win from Arsenal in the most ironic fashion to close out the year. And yeah, I remember the amount of joy I had, Rob, at the close of last season, getting to see the trophy come back where it belongs, to Kings Meadow and in front of robust Manchester United crowd at Old Trafford. That was a pretty great way to end the year.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite funny, actually, because the moment I sort of pinpoint that Chelsea actually decided that, they're going to win it, was the third goal against Bristol City being scored by Aggie Beaver-Jones. Now, Beaver-Jones had a loan spell at Bristol, and earlier in the season when she played them, she scored against them and hadn't celebrated. This one, she wasn't going to celebrate, it was for a complete different reason. She went and collected the ball and then was like, right, we're getting on with this. And then also the other resigning moment in that was Wrighton mouthing, I'm sorry, to the Bristol goalkeeper after her hat-trick goal, because she went and picked the ball up again to know to go and score again. And that was quite something. I mean, the other one was, I was actually in Italy at the time of the Spurs game. And so in my evening in Italy, I was out at the time, but I spent quite a while. I was in a place where there wasn't actually any Wi-Fi signal. So I was getting random notifications coming through, very, very delayed. And I don't think I've celebrated a goal quite as much as that. And the poor other Italian people must have wondered why I was randomly celebrating. Because, again, at the time, a lot of them were watching the Italian Super Cup final, which was on the same night. And at the same time, I think the ball went out for a throw-in. So I must have looked like a big idiot to all the people there, but that was good fun. And yeah, I mean, Manchester United away. Well, it was kind of funny actually. I think before the United game, I'd sort of talked to people who have links into the United camp, and they'd said, our season ended last week with the FA Cup final. A lot of players say, don't really want to even play this, and they said to me, it wouldn't surprise me if you come here and just absolutely wallop us. And after about 5 minutes, one of them just texts me and says, yeah, if you want me after the game, come and find me. I'll be in one of the bars. So that sort of, I think, typified it really. But yeah, no, it's great fun, and I think it typifies what Chelsea just do. Whatever the situation, they just win on the women's side.
So just then some predictions kind of in total league position and points for it here. Look, I'm gonna say that Chelsea do it again, 6 in a row, eighth in total. Sign me up for it. Yeah, just this. There is enough winning infrastructure in this side that exists, as well as injecting a little in terms of the newcomers, both within manager and players, to get it done. And 56 points. It's somewhere in the low to mid 50s that you need to win the FAWSL. And I think it'll be a little bit on the higher end. I don't know. I think it's going to be tight, Nick.
Yeah, I think it will be tight. I think Arsenal have improved. I think City are going to be probably the strongest threat that we have to the title. Ultimately, though, I think we will see this season, Rob, more drop points than we have in previous seasons. And I think that's because the league is getting better and more competitive. I also think that this is Bompastor's first run at this league, and there could be a slip up, as we have seen before, whether that's against Liverpool or Brighton or some such team that isn't in that like top three grouping. But ultimately, I think that will happen to everybody. I think it'll happen to City. I think it'll happen to Arsenal. And I think 52 points is enough to get the title done and get our sixth straight.
Yeah, I'm broadly inclined to agree again. I think 53. I think there will be more drop points again this year. It wouldn't surprise me if we did get the first season where someone won it with 50 points or less, just because I think the top teams are all going to start dropping more points. And I think the biggest thing, for Chelsea this year, is to make sure they don't drop points against the other top teams. That needs to be where you're not dropping points now, because I think that's where if you're assuming you're beating the teams that you're expected to beat, you then can't fold. And that's the problem with Arsenal last year. They dropped too many points against the teams that they were they dropped points against teams they're expected to beat, and then did well against the teams they weren't expected to beat. And in Manchester City's case, they dropped points against teams that they weren't expected to beat, which is fine. But then they also dropped silly points in other games as well.
So then switching to the facts, and maybe we've played our hand a little bit here, but in domestic and international cup performance. So how will we fare? Chelsea have two domestic competitions, the Conti Cup and the FA Cup. And look, it's been a minute since Chelsea have won either of those. This is one of those rare seasons that we just went through where Chelsea only hoisted one piece of silverware the entire season, which is an off year for the Chelsea women's team. Just to say that on the trend line, that's a down year. We're in the Women's Champions League as well. So that would be 3 cups that Chelsea could go out and win, 3 competitions beyond the league. We've all said that Chelsea will win the league. But as it relates to that domestic double that could be done, as well as a international competition, Rob, what are your thoughts on how Chelsea will do across those 3 other competitions?
I mean, with the greatest will in the world to not even I don't even know if it's now it's not the Continental Tires Cup anymore, is it? It's now got a new sponsor.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they doing to the beautiful game? What has happened to the beautiful game that I love? Well, to me, it's always like in the same way that the Johnson's Paint Trophy is always the Johnson's Paint Trophy, and the Carling Cup is still the Carling Cup to me, even if it's got some new drink sponsor. The Carabao Cup, not the Carabao even, the Conti Cup I think we'll continue to not really care about it. In all honesty, I don't think anyone at Chelsea ever comes into the season thinking, oh boy, we're going to win the Conti Cup again. If ideally we can have another time where we don't get to a final and lose it in disappointing fashion to Arsenal, that would be appreciated. Ideally, if they could, just get knocked out against Manchester City or against Manchester United or whatever, ideal. FA Cup, I would like to win the FA Cup. I treat the FA Cup with, the level of pedigree and respect it deserves. And I've got to be honest, it stung last year. due to the nature of how we lost that game and the fact we're going for another win in a row. It's stung. Go and get that back. League, as I've said, I think we should win that. Champions League is a really interesting one. Assuming a fully fit squad, I think there's no reason we shouldn't be looking to get to the final. It depends when we get to face our lovely friends from Spain again. And also, I think if we end up facing Sonia Bompastor's old side, because I think they will be keen to get one over. But ideally, if they can just face each other on the other side of the draw and we can have a nice, cosy run to the final, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to bury the lead here. I think we win the Champions League this year. I'm looking at this squad. I don't think that Barcelona are better than they were. I don't think that Lyon are better than they were. I don't think you look around the European side of football right now and just look at the continent and say that there's, a team that Chelsea should be afraid of. I think we've kind of debunked being afraid of Barcelona the last 2 years. And if not for some incredibly dodgy refereeing, probably take that tie, the tie at Stamford Bridge last year. Assuming a healthy squad and no refereeing shenanigans, let me put it that way, I think we win the Champions League. And I don't think we have to play Barcelona in the semifinal again. Watch me eat my words on that one later. But I think we'll end up on a friendlier pathway. And then, if you only have to beat one of those good teams once instead of twice, then, your path becomes a little easier. So I think we're Champions League winners. I think, Emma basically set the table so that Bompastor could come down and kick that door down. And I think we're going to be FA Cup winners as well. I agree. I don't think we're going to take the Conti Cup or whatever the hell it's called now seriously. And that just might be a rotation, a whole squad rotation game where you play some of the folks who are not in the regular starting 11, just let them run through that trophy. That'd be kind of
a question for you both.
Thought.
Would you take if Arsenal or Manchester City did a domestic treble if Chelsea won the Women's Champions League?
Yeah, I'd make that trade. It's the one that we want, right? I mean, I didn't care who won the league when the men's team won in 2012. None of that bothered me. So I would make that trade.
I don't know. Do we get the domestic treble if we don't win the Champions League? Because that's if the other side of the coin.
I mean,
the other side of the coin is we get all three.
I'm
not making the trade for no guarantee.
We lose to the eventual winners in both in the competition. So you lose to Arsenal in both the Conti and say the FA Cup, and we finish third in the league behind Arsenal, Manchester City, but we win the Champions League.
I don't think I'm taking that trade.
And the answer to me is you jump at this because we've done. The answer to me is you jump at this. The answer to me is you jump at that deal because we've done a domestic treble before. That's not something new. Arsenal have done that before. That's not something new. Winning this format of the Champions League is something none of the English teams have done. And it's the last chance to win it in this format before it goes to this ridiculous new format that everyone's championing next year. At least it does mean that we aren't going to play Real Madrid in every single group stage, which, that seems worryingly. I looked at the calculations for this group stage, and assuming that the teams that are seeded win their next playoff round, we have something like a 67% chance of Real Madrid or PSG again. So
shocking. Wow.
I think it's Real Madrid, PSG, or Wolfsburg. So we'll play the team from seed 2 that we played every other year.
Yeah, I want to say Millie Bright Champions League winner at the end of this year, because I think like that would be a capstone on an incredible career. Same for Aaron Cuthbert, same for Guro Wrighton. Like I think I want to be able to call a lot of our best players or our most kind of box standard incredible talents champions of Europe at the end of the year. So that trade is automatic for me.
I will just quickly sum up to say I think we get at least one of the domestic trophies this year. I'd love it to be the FA Cup because I feel like there's a little more prestige around that one, a little more shine on that trophy relative to the League Cup title, as Rob put it bluntly. And then I don't think we win the Champions League. I'm hopeful, but I just think there's a weird little hex on Chelsea when it comes to European football, at least on the women's side. I'd love to be wrong on that one. Please, whoever is listening, prove me wrong on that one. But let's talk about individual player accolades. So player and young player of the season. Again, the defining line of young player is 23, which to some people may or may not be old as it relates to the definition of young. But look, I think there are plenty of names you can pick and choose from. There are some overlapping names. Nick and Rob, you both went with a similar name, though, for your player of the season. Nick, do you want to kind of soapbox for your favorite?
I'm wearing her shirt right now. It's Erin Cuthbert. I don't think there's a whole lot of detail needed here. The clarification that I asked Rob before we started is she going to be okay? Because Dan and I were at the Gotham match a couple weeks ago, and she went down after a little bit of friendly fire, unfortunately, with a bit of a knee injury. And I've never seen her look that concerned about an injury. It was a pretty tough scene, but it feels like, Rob, if she is healthy, she just the 30 minutes we got of her in that Gotham game, she's going to absolutely go to a new height this year. And that's a scary thing because she's already, I think, one of the world's best midfielders, although apparently not Ballon d'Or level, which I'll never understand.
Yeah, I mean, like I said it last year, I think on the show, and I've said it elsewhere in my writing. Yeah, when Erin Cuthbert plays well, Chelsea tend to win. When Erin Cuthbert has an off day, Chelsea do not tend to win or don't win as easily. Simple as.
And then some difference of opinion as relates to young player of the season. Rob, you went with a different name than Nick. And the individual I actually think could have a sneaky outside shout as player of the season if you take into account if they can capitalize on their preseason form.
Yeah, I mean, I will be completely honest. I wanted to pick the same name as Nick for Young Player of the Season as well, but I decided that there ought to be some variation here. I've gone for Aggie Beaver-Jones because I think, people at the start of last season, I don't think you expected Beaver-Jones to have the impact that she had. I don't think they expected her to be a decent squad player at the club. I don't think anyone expected by the end of the season you'd be looking at her and, saying, wow, she should be starting. There were some games that she literally dragged the team through towards the end of the year, which for someone of her age is incredible. As a centre forward, I think she has absolutely everything. I think off the left and off the right, she can play well too, but I think she's better as a centre forward. She can finish with both feet. She's quick. She can dribble well. She's good in the air. Perfect package. To me, this is her and Alessia Russo should be battling it out for the England starting spot as a centre forward. And I personally think, I'm very much in Team Beaver-Jones here. But again, I think Russo's a good player. I think she's better off in behind the striker, in all honesty. And I think you'd actually get a lot out of the two of them if you played them together. But yeah, I think Beaver-Jones, she's still only, 21 this season. She's someone who I think, with how much she loves the club and the fact I don't think by choice she would leave, she's someone I think, you'll potentially look at the player who will have Fran Kirby's record in her sights.
Wow. Bold comments on this one.
You look at last season. Look at how many. I think it was 13 last season. She's 1/10 of the way there already.
Wow. Yeah, Dan, I went for Vika Captain. I think this is a player who has shown so much in preseason, but I think just generally has such good experience already, just being 18 going on 19, that this is an obvious pick in some ways. And like, you could see a midfield of Cuthbert, Captain, and Nuskin bombing up forward at some point this year. And that is a frightening trio, I think, if you were playing against that, because there's athleticism, there's skill, there's scoring potential in all three of them. And yeah, I would just go with the two midfielders, my options. What about you?
Yeah, so I mean, as I hinted earlier, Aggie Beaver-Jones, I'm just riding the hype train this season for player of the season. I just think, with the Sam Kerr injury kind of getting back up to full speed, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for her to impress. And under a new manager, if you can impress early and you can hold down a spot, I think it's going to be super interesting to see how she gets used this season. And then when you look at young player of the season, again, I'm not going to double up and say because you really player of the season, young player of the season, you have to select a different name. We don't have a lot of young players on this side. So the sub 23s is like 5 to 6 players you could pick from. Hannah Hampton might have been a good shout. I think that could have been like the plus up like year over year. I think if Chelsea have a really good season, and if we win the Women's Champions League, she probably had a phenomenal campaign to help us do that. So that would have been a good shout. But I think Micah is the one that I have to go with potential young player of the season in that regard. Then, I think we've already shared a lot of praise with her in this episode, but those would be the two that I went with. Look, there's also the fact about just overall impact, and I think that relates to like Golden Boot, leader and assists, like who's going to potentially give you the largest contribution from the attack. And I think sometimes if you select an attacker in here, you probably have to back it up and say that there will be the individual that you put down in this one. So I had to double up with Aggie for just can if she's my player of the season, she probably had to be our Golden Boot in the league, but. I think, Nick, you went with another name in terms of just distribution here for attacking influence, as it were.
Yeah, I went with this pick for a couple of reasons. One, I think Lauren is going to get quite a bit of attention defensively this season. I think there could be double teams thrown at her just to try.
Can they stop her? Can 2 people stop her?
That's a great
Can 3
question.
people stop her?
I don't think so, but I think that's going to free up this player to have some sneaky late runs into the box and make a ton of assists, and that's Girl Wrighton. I still am a believer. I know she had kind of a rough start to last season and really came on strong late, but she is such a quality player. She still has so much in her game, and her left foot is an absolute wand. And so I cannot, in good conscience, go anywhere else. I think your Myras will get a lot of picks, maybe Cat Max out there getting a few picks here, but I still am a believer, Rob, in everything that Girl Wrighton does. And if I'm going to have her in my best 11, she's contributing a hell of a lot of goals and assists.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone for the boring pick. If Lauren James stays fit, Lauren James will score. Lauren James will get assists. I think Lauren James has now hit that level where she's no longer that young player that people talk about. She's now just a bona fide player who's getting towards world-class status. Is now becoming an international star for club and country. And I think that she's the sort of player that will be, if she has a good season, that's when Chelsea will win the Champions League and will win the league again.
So, comeback player of the year, usually an award to someone who's maybe had a off season or potentially was injury impacted at the last season to come back. I think a very popular pick for this one would be Sam Kerr. So I'll raise my hand and say that. But I feel like you both rallied around me to make sure that we were not giving the same boring answer across the 3 of us. And so, Rob, I know you went with Ashley Lawrence is yours. What's the reason for it?
So I think Lawrence started to really get some form towards the end of the season. And I really hope she continues that this year, because I think at the start of the season, it was a little disappointing. I think Lawrence is an incredibly good fullback and is someone who Chelsea didn't necessarily see the best of, both from an attacking sense but also from a defensive sense. At the start of the season, she was very much in and out of the side. She can play on both sides, which I think is a big thing, and play further forward. But I think now with all of the competition in the positions, she's got to raise her game, and I really hope she can. Because I think Chelsea haven't seen the best of her, and if they can get the rotations and the combinations in play with her, especially when she's playing right fullback, if you maybe have James and sort of cutting inside and Lawrence going on the outside, Chelsea haven't made enough of her crossing ability. She has phenomenal crossing ability, and that also really good delivery from dead balls. And Chelsea haven't really, taken advantage of that yet. And I think she can have a really good season and be a really important player in a lot of positions.
Yeah, I went with Cat Mac, Dan. I just injuries have slowed her down. We saw a little bit of her at the end of last season start to come to life. I think in behind a striker, she is unbelievably dangerous as a passer. And we saw just a couple of dime assists from her at the end of last season. I think if she makes my best 11, that means she's had a really great comeback campaign this year. And I want to start to see the best out of her because she's such a talented and dynamic player.
And a fun category we like going through in our episodes is just master of the dark arts, the individual who can, use a little bit of subterfuge, use a little bit of play acting, potentially can pull the wool over the eyes of maybe one or two or three foul officials who run amok trying to ruin our matches. But I think, Nick, there's probably I would almost say it could be a close unanimous name in this one.
Well, I hope so, and I hope it's because she is smarter with how she deploys the dark arts. Because I think there's been some cases where Lauren James has got caught up in the moment and maybe has seen a little bit of the red mist and done something that is not very sporting in a way. But I think as she matures and as she gets better at some of the little dark artsy things that can make a player beloved at Chelsea Football Club, because we do love a little bit of dark arts. I think she will rein in some of the outer edges, and I think she will become incredibly impactful as a dark arts participant this season. And I'm looking forward to seeing the continued evolution of how she deploys some of these tactics, Rob, because for me, in moments where your best creator is someone who can also do a little bit of dark arts, that's an incredibly dangerous player, and I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually, because I was going to say someone slightly different, because I think she's starting to get very good at it, but I think also uh, officials are wising up on it, is that I want to see Hampton continue to really frustrate opponents. She's so good at, she's clearly a graduate from the AKB School of Dark Arts.
Yep.
Of the fact that when
Yep.
there have been moments where there's been going down to the injury, or taking that extra few seconds, or moving that ball across. And while I think it is, I find it really frustrating when opposition teams do it to us. That's exactly what it's designed to do. And I think Hannah, with her character and stuff like that, I think she quite revels in the fact, she gets stick from opposition fans, and I think she quite enjoys that element of it, being the pantomime villain. And I think that's something she, really starts to do very, very well. And the more and more you see of her, and the more she was playing towards the end, she was starting to look like a Chelsea goalkeeper in all sense of the words, including that element of being able to frustrate opponents.
All right. Well, so that kind of gets us down to starting to summarize where we think this season is going, where Chelsea are going to head. And so, look, I would just say the way we start most of our match reviews is with a 3-word match review. But let's get this one on the closeout with a 3-word season prediction. And so, Nick, where do you think we're heading with this one?
Based on my trophy haul that I'm predicting for Chelsea Football Club, I'm going ole ole ole, because I think there's going to be a lot of Campiones sung at the end of the season. And I'm in this spot where I look at this team, I look at the talent, I look at what they've built, I look at the winning streaks and the character that exists within this squad. And it is really hard I think most people listening to this season preview are shocked at the amount of positivity that is raining out from my voice about this season. Some things are just that obvious. And I think it's that obvious that this team is going to be doing a lot of winning at the end of the season. And I'm very excited for that. So ole, ole, ole.
And Rob, you had another one that I think also carries some of that excitement and positivity.
Yeah, to coin a phrase, everyone's favourite Norwegian, gonna be fun. I think people don't really know what to expect at times from Chelsea, and I think a lot of teams will be surprised. I think a lot of fans, have seen some of the preseason results and have now suddenly sat up and took notice, especially even a 9-0 win. Whatever opposition that's against, it's going to draw eyes to it.
I'm going to go with one, especially after listening to Sonia's comments during the preseason, some of the interviews about the importance of Chelsea winning, about winning across all fronts, competing in all competitions. It feels like there is absolutely a connection between the Chelsea women of old and the new generation we're entering. So instead of the French connection, it will be the French connector, getting us connected to the past, present, and future, what it means to be a Chelsea Football Club on the women's side. So very, very excited for the season ahead. But Nick, any other thoughts as we leave this one and get ready for another, gonna be fun, as Rob said it, season of Chelsea women's football?
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, please, if you have a faint interest in women's football, please, please, please tune in, give these guys a chance to, I think, oftentimes make your weekend of results and football watching better. They're a ton of fun to watch. They play incredible football. We have some incredible characters in this group, fun, interesting, dynamic people, and they are so deserving of your 2 hours of weekend time. So I'm hopeful that the fan base and the audience grows for this, because I'm just enthusiastic. And look, I think we've gotten better, and a lot of other teams have not gotten better. So it could be a really fun ride.
And Rob, any other thoughts to set the stage from your end as it relates to this upcoming season?
Yeah, similar to what's already been said. I will also say to anyone, if you do want to come and tell me why anything you heard from me today is wrong, I'm in Block A in the West Stand, so please come and say hello if you do see me at any other games, starting off with Villa, and also, if you see me at Stamford Bridge as well, please do come along and say hello, because I do enjoy. Believe it or not, I do enjoy chatting with people, although it may not, seem like it at times on X. I do actually enjoy talking to people.
Well, I'm sure people will find out from this episode, listening to it, and then potentially in in-person interactions. You are just a wonderful gentleman, and immensely knowledgeable when it comes to the Chelsea women and women's football writ large. But look, that's going to do it for this episode. So hopefully you are excited, ready, and locked in for the upcoming Chelsea women's football season. And get involved in the Discord community. Chat with us there. Plenty of absolutely diehard fans of the Chelsea women's team to chat with. You can get signed up for our free weekly newsletter. Lens with Dispatch. Sam is going to certainly have some articles coming out this season about Sonia Bompastor and the players. And you also hit us up on YouTube. Let us know what you think in the comments about how this Chelsea women's season is going to unfold. That's going to do it for this episode. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.